watching Strictly Security. Thank you for staying with us. As the Israeli political system is stuck in instability, Israel's enemies don't wait for politicians to figure things out. A renewed wave of arson balloons, occasional rocket fire from Gaza, and of course, Iran. I sat down with Merav Michaeli, a member of Israel's Labor Party and former member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, to hear her thoughts on these burning issues. MK Merav Michaeli, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
The headlines during the past few days are dealing with the Jordan Valley and whether Israel should actually annex it and decide that it's an Israeli soil or leave it as it was since '67. What's your position on that?
First of all, it's amazing to see how something that is completely political, the whole motivation for even discussing the issue is nothing about the security of Israel, is nothing about the political prospect of Israel itself, only about the political prospect of Netanyahu and of Gantz, who is the challenger of Netanyahu. This is why everybody is discussing it, because if you actually attend to the content, then everybody knows that the possibility to annex unilaterally the Jordan Valley is a major risk for Israel. It can harm dramatically the relationship with Jordan. This is the number one thing that frightens the king. It will damage profoundly the chances of a future negotiation with the Palestinians for a separation that is peaceful as much as it can be. It'll hurt Israel in the international arena. Again, it's major. It's not something slight. And still everybody is discussing it as if it is a possibility.
But even leaders of your party in the past, Shimon Peres, Yitzhak Rabin, that was one of his main issues, said that in any agreement, future agreement, the Jordan Valley must stay in Israeli custody because it's an Israeli interest.
First of all, the key word here was agreement. In an agreement, I always say, anything Israelis and Palestinians can agree on is a good agreement as far as I'm concerned. The major challenge here is to reach an agreement. But what they are discussing is not an agreement at all. It's a discussion about a unilateral step which will be extremely dangerous for Israel. The security does not only come from where you stand on the hill or in the mountain or exactly where the border passes. The number one thing that brings security is peace, and a reliable peace, something that is sustainable, and when you have partners to work with. Israel and Jordan, Egypt and Jordan, or especially Egypt, obviously, was a bitter enemy of Israel. I mean, it was prior to the Iran era. The biggest threat was from Egypt. And now this is one of the foundations of Israel's security. So it's not exactly about where you draw the line. It's about what does it consist. This is the thing that, unfortunately, today the leaders that we have in place do not take into consideration and are not accountable for.
But more than that, Merav, as far as I know, and I deal a bit with the defense institution, there was not even a single discussion regarding that. If such an act will be taken place, at least you expect the IDF and the Shabak and the National Security Council and the Foreign Office and others to discuss it. And as far as I know, nobody has discussed it yet.
You're so right. And this exactly goes to show you how unserious this is. How much it's not about policy, but about politics and about media and about propaganda.
So, if we're talking about things that Israel didn't do or not interested in, we're in a political era that never stops with the ongoing elections.
An ongoing campaign,
yes.
Constant campaign.
One thing that you don't hear is two words. One is peace. Nobody dares to speak of peace. And the second one, it's a double word, but it's the Palestinian Authority or Abu Mazen. Nobody mentions them. Why so?
First of all, this is the success of Netanyahu's policy. Netanyahu, if you look at the 10 years, the last 10 years in which Netanyahu is prime minister, and you look at Hamas, they are stronger than ever. They have more recognition, international recognition, and amazingly, moreover, an Israeli recognition. He is negotiating with Hamas, and at the same time, he's ignoring, exactly like you said, he's ignoring Abu Mazen. This is because Netanyahu does not want a Palestinian state to ever come to life. This is because he wants to prevent any chance of a future, I would say, interference in in the freedom that Israel takes in the West Bank. And he thinks it serves him. But the fact of the matter is that it may serve him politically, but for the state of Israel, it's a major hazard for its future. Because if we do not have a peaceful border with the Palestinians, you know what? If we do not have a border between Israel and the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian state, the Palestinian entity, then there is a question, does Israel survive as a Jewish and democratic state?
But you hear as well as I do, you heard it in the previous electoral campaign, and probably it will appear in the current one. Many parties, including the party of the current defense minister, Naftali Bennett, speaking openly, publicly about annexing all of the West Bank.
I hope Netanyahu does not stay prime minister for too long. But had he remained prime minister, he would have found himself a victim to his own propaganda. Because at the end of the day, he wants to be a protector of Israel. You want to maintain Israel and Israel's security and Israel's legitimacy in the world. It will not work at the end of the day with annexation, because then you either have a state that does not give the same equal rights to half of its citizens, of its inhabitants actually. You do not allow them to become citizens, or you have a state that does not have a Jewish majority anymore. And this is not the state of Israel anymore.
What do you say to those who say, look, we did the same with Gaza, look what we get there,
well,
look at the missile, look at the terror, look at Hamas, it would be the same in the West Bank?
Well, I have it on record that I was against the unilateral disengagement at real time, not now. I have no doubt that had we done it as a part of an agreement with Abu Mazen, then things would have turned out very, very differently. But it doesn't matter. Still, the situation with Gaza, it needs to be resolved, but it needs to be resolved through negotiation with Abu Mazen, not giving Hamas the power to prevent a solution for a Palestinian entity.
But currently Israel is talking to Hamas.
Well, against its own interest, that's what I claim. But I want to go back, with your permission, to the Sunni states, and I want to talk about their interest in an alliance with Israel. Amazingly, more than ever. And let's remember that the Arab League Peace Initiative was submitted to Israel in 2002. That is, 18 years ago already. No Israeli prime minister has ever responded to the Arab League Peace Initiative, which basically said, all of the Arab countries came and said, okay, this is a white flag. We understand, we get it. You're not going anywhere.
But you're here forever.
You're here forever. We are offering you a full normalization in exchange for a Palestinian state in the 67 borders and an agreed upon solution for the refugees in Jerusalem. Since then, in the Kerry effort, they have also added an agreement to land swap. So it's not exactly the 67 borders. And yet, no one has ever picked it up. Now, ever since then, the interest of some of the Arab countries has grown because of Iran, because of the developments in
ISIS, etc.
And in the area. But the thing is that whatever confidential liaison we have with those countries, it will never become normal as long as the Palestinian conflict is not resolved. It's like an affair. I don't know who of our viewers have ever had an affair, but you know, if you did, how limited it is. And the Saudis will not leave the Palestinians and marry Israel. This is not going to happen. And at the end, it's us stuck here with the Palestinians, not the Saudis. So it's our interest. The amazing thing is that we do not talk about our interest.
And what would you say to Netanyahu or his supporters saying that Israel cannot deal with everything? The main issue currently is Iran. Israel deals with Iran, which we find on our borders in Lebanon, in Syria, etc., etc. So we can leave the Palestinian issue aside and we have to stop Iran, and that's the main issue now.
Do you know what Yitzhak Rabin's first and foremost trigger and reason to go to Oslo was?
Iran.
Iran. He realized that Iran is becoming a major threat and he needed to clear the way to be able to deal with it properly. Both in terms of energy, time, but also realizing that as long as we do not resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's going to be stuck in our ability to deal with the Iranian
and yet,
threat.
if you look at the Iranian threats...
And yet, I say, first of all, I'm worried that Benjamin Netanyahu, you know, everybody talks about how he drew attention to the Iranian threat. I think that it has a major downside to it also, and that is that he made it an Israeli issue rather than international. I mean, with all due respect, Iran is dangerous for Israel, but it's not dangerous only for Israel. And the fact that it became our business, I think, hurt our ability to be effective.
With the targeted killing of Qasem Soleimani, the Americans said, we are here, it's our interest as well.
Talking about strategy, it's not like President Trump has a strategy. Now, if you saw Martin Indych's essay from last week, I think, saying that actually America does not have an interest in the Middle East anymore because it doesn't need its energy anymore, and why should it put any effort there at all? Then it's not so clear that we can trust that America will always be there in that regard. Israel needs to remember that at the end of the day, we need to take care of ourselves. This is why we have to be responsible in the way we conduct ourselves. And I have to tell you something else. You know, we are speaking today in a day where we're going to have this huge performance in Yad Vashem. All the leaders of the world are coming to pay their respects for 75 years to the liberation of Auschwitz. On one hand, we feel constantly victims and victimized, and on the other hand, we feel omnipotent. We feel that we are the strongest. No one can do anything to us. So we sort of go from one end of the scale to the other. And we need to stop for a minute and take responsibility for our strength, not for our victimizing sort of psychological feeling. We are very strong. We need to work from this strength. We can reach out to our neighbors because it's our interest that they are in a better position and we have a border between us, and then we can be free to deal with whatever other threats come along.
Merav Michaeli, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Yoav, very much.
After this short break, former Director General of Israel's Ministry of Defense warns serious flaws to IDF's preparedness will be imminent if the political crisis cannot be resolved quickly. Stay with us.